This is an interview, October 28th. Right?
June 28th.
Hey, Bob, how do you like that? This is Barbara Johnson I'm talking to.
She's one of the best people we ever had here.
Here I am over in Chakeres Theater interviewing Corwin, and it's June 28th, 1999, I'm sure of that. And this is a customary interview for the archives of the Clark County Historical Society. And here we go. Corwin, why did you come here?
I was offered a job. It's pretty simple. I was at Ohio State. I did my master's and doctorate at Ohio State. I was there from 68 to 72. And Dorothy Lammy was a classmate. We did our master's and our doctorates together. And in the spring of that year, she had come over and interviewed for a position and was hired as director of the theater. And there was another position. And my life's been one of those lives in which fate seems to have things predetermined, or it's all fated. So Dorothy was to come back over and interview people for the other position. And somehow Dorothy fell getting out of her car, dropped a typewriter on her foot. She couldn't drive to come to Wittenberg. So she said, Corwin, would you drive me over to Springfield? And while I interview this candidate they have, you could sit and talk to Bob Wills, his chairperson. So I said, sure, I'd be glad to do that. It was summer. Well, actually, it was in May. So I drove her over. I sat with Bob Wills, who was director of the theater. We spent the afternoon together. Dorothy met the other people and the candidate. And at the end of the afternoon, Bob Wills said, why don't you come back on Monday, which was Memorial Day, and in those days we had classes on Memorial Day, and you interview for the position. So I said, okay, that would be great, actually, because I wasn't really looking very hard for a job. So I came back on Monday and interviewed everyone. I can remember meeting Joe Binley from Personnel Board. At that time, he was on Personnel Board. He was the first I met. Green Ballard was dean. Dick Bueller was chairperson of the English department. And we were part of the English department. And met students, met Bob Wills, Jim Cleveland, Bob Schweitzer, who was the technical theater person. And that was on Monday, Memorial Day. And then on Wednesday, Dick Bueller called me and said they wanted to offer me the job. Would I take it? And so I said I have to think about it, because if truth were known, I had wanted to stay in Columbus.
And this was right out of school?
Right out of school. Right out of grad school. In fact, I was to I guess I was going to walk and receive my doctorate that spring, probably in June sometime. So I had spent the last year in Columbus working for Neal Avenue Elementary School as a volunteer. And that was the school for all the handicapped children and mentally retarded kids in Columbus. And I had really enjoyed being a volunteer there and doing drama with the kids. And the principal who was there, Virginia Zollinger, was trying to arrange a position for me in the school system in Columbus. So Dick called, and I stalled for 24 hours, whatever it was, and found out Columbus was not going to happen, so I said, I'll be happy to come to Springfield, which was convenient because I'm from Wilmington originally, that area, and so that meant that I would be, relatively close to my parents and family, and that's worked out pretty well.
Yeah, funny, I had you tagged as an Easterner.
No, nope, Wilmington, Ohio. My wife Ann is an Easterner.
Yeah.
And she's a graduate of Wittenberg. In fact, she was in the first class I taught here. And so then about 6-7 years later, we were married.
I remember her as an employee at Wittenberg.
Oh, yes. She when she left here, we always laughed because after her graduation, she seemed to quit jobs every 10 weeks. Not that they were great jobs. She worked at the mall at a store. She worked in the doctor's office. And she always said it was because she was used to being on a quarter system at school. She needed a vacation after every 10-week period. But then she worked at Urbana College when we were married, and she moved down to Wittenberg and worked in the advancement office and really enjoyed it. And then she had the opportunity to go to Community Hospital, where she was the first executive director of the foundation. Mm-hmm. And then she's moved over, she's left it, and she is the vice president in charge of strategic planning now for the hospital. So Springfield's been good to both of us, and Wittenberg has been good to both of us. That's how I happened to wind up here.
And you stuck it out.
I stuck it out, yeah. Yeah.
Think of serving under one president for 21 years,
Isn't
which
that
you
amazing?
did.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think it was, I think the second year I was here, Dr. Andine was the president when I was hired. And then Bill, I think, was acting president, wasn't he, for a year?
He was acting president in 74.
Okay.
Became president 75, the year I retired.
Yeah. I've always really, I don't know Bill Kinnison well, but I've always had great respect for him and what he did for this university. And I think it, I don't think I would have had it any other way than to have Bill Kinnison here in those years, because he did a lot that was good. He moved us forward.
That's the way I felt about Stoughton, who came after I had been here 5 or 6 years, and really came like a blast of wonderful warm air.
Yeah. Bill had visions. He got people to participate in creating those visions for this university, and it was amazing. Mm-hmm. Good times, and they weren't easy times.
Oh no. No.
So I really have great respect and admiration for him.
He had to postpone a number of practical things, such as the rehabilitation and improvement of the existing building for lack of money. And finally, that has caught up, and Baird just simply has to face it.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. We do. And yet, at the same time, while Bill was here, there were those buildings that were done. The student center was remodeled, renovated, the new field house. So it wasn't,
wasn't just sitting still.
No, he wasn't sitting still.
Yeah.
I always wish that we'd gotten a performing arts center at the time, but hopefully that will happen someday. I don't know.
I don't know either, because maybe I'm getting to the fearful stage where I see private education and TV and computers in such competition for the mass. I still hope there's enough room for a small guy.
Oh, I hope so too. I think the real secret for anyone that's small that wants to remain is quality of students, to draw them. But see, that's why I think the Performing Arts Center is important. I think it's one of the things that students that we want to come here look for as part of what's on this campus and what they will be exposed to. We have the Wittenberg series, which goes back to Bill Kinnison's vision once again, and I think that's important. But unless the students hear about it or on campus when it's happening, there's not a visible sign of it unless they see a poster. And the same for Performing Arts Center. We have a good theater program, we have a good music program, and so on, but we really need that facility that says to people we are serious about it. If we want to draw the students here, they're going to go to an Oberlin or somewhere else that we might like to have.
Whatever happened with really abandoning the formal public speaking courses?
What happened? That takes me back even before my time to the days of Dr. Brees and so on, and what a great guy he evidently was.
I even taught the Army Air Corps cadets in that program.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Because I think that the emphasis has shifted. We had Ernie Dacre. Ernie was here until he retired, and then his position was filled on an interim basis. And at this time we have one person in speech and communication, and that's Kathy Wagner. And I think that the focus is not so much on speaking as it is on communication and the theories of communication, and somewhat communication as a social science almost, and being looked at in those ways. And hopefully down the road there will be a communications major. I know that we've talked about that in different departments and different committees have looked at it, and I imagine something that next year will happen to communication major, because I think it would be very popular on campus. But I think nationally you'll see that there's been a shift from speaking towards communication, almost as a social science.
The debate teams are passé, aren't they?
Some places, here I guess. There are other schools that still have debate teams.
Yeah, that was my prize ambition.
Did you enjoy debate?
Oh, yeah.
You know, Gary Gaffield's quite a debater.
Is he?
Oh, yeah, and he had taught debate at one point. I always thought we should try to get Gary back into doing debate here.
Yeah, I had 2 years of it in high school and 4 at DePaul, then going to law school.
So you know how important it is, that whole process.
Yeah. How do you see the current situation on the campus with regard to your realm of activity? Is it good, or is it holding its own?
In terms of theater, since I teach theater, I think it's solid. I think it's good. We had a great freshman class come in terms of theater students, some really talented people. Our students who graduate are doing well. They work professionally. Some act, some direct, some use the skills that they learn in theater and other careers. I don't think that the program is growing, per se. I don't think that there's any more majors. Dance is doing well right now. We have a dance minor at this time, and the dance company and performances. We have a lot of students who want to be involved and participate, though they may not want to major. And that's fine, because we've always been open to that and really believe in the whole idea of the liberal arts and all of the things coming together. And I think in theater, all of the arts do come together, all the subjects come together, and students are able to synthesize all that information through theater. I think the key for theater is that building. If it's going to grow here, I think at some point we really have to get serious about having a performing arts center, a place that when students come and interview on campus and look at us, prospective students, that they'll say, this place is serious about the arts.
It just isn't practical to use the Chris Center?
Our students don't want to go downtown. It must seem like a million miles to them, or they don't feel safe or something. Because, we take Wittenberg Series events down there. We provide transportation for students to those events. And
you don't show up.
They don't show up.
Yeah.
Not like they should. Even though there's nothing else supposed to happen on campus at the same time, but there's a Wittenberg Series event. So I don't think that's the answer. I think that what we need is a performing arts center that's a community center for Wittenberg. A place that we can get together to hear a speaker, that we can see a play, we can bring in a dance company, we can have the symphony perform many times, whatever. We need a community center on campus. We have the chapel, and we use it at times, and we have the field house. And for us to have a community spirit, I really think that that's the other part that's missing with that building. So it's hard. It's hard for us as a program without it. Especially you get a student who wants to do technical theater, who wants to have the latest equipment, the latest facility to work in. They don't see that here. Although we have students who go out and work in technical theater and do quite well. So,
what would happen if you really got the money to convert the chapel into a combination chapel performing arts, air conditioned?
I don't know. That would be interesting. I think there would become a question then of if it is a combination chapel performing arts center, is there ever a subject that's inappropriate for that space in terms of a play?
Yes.
I thought I'd let you answer that.
I've been to a few here.
I know. Sometimes those really test us, don't they? What we believe. I think it's very clear what we all believe when we sometimes see something that we really disagree with. But I think that would be the issue then. I don't think there's any question that a performing arts center would be used all the time. When you think of Union Board, what it presents, you think of the Wittenberg Series, you think of the music program, the dance program, the theater program, lectures that we could do.
Yeah.
So I would love to see that happen. I don't know that it will during my lifetime. I always thought it would. And we've gotten close several times. George Eisenhower's been out here several times to talk. He's drawn up plans.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, and and I know that.
Phil Chakeres was interested once, wasn't he?
Yeah, and of course the Chakeres family has been very loyal, very supportive of theater here. I think the last time was when the city and the community, Park State, had the chance to build Cliss Auditorium. And at that point, George Eisenhower was coming and bringing plans to campus, and we were talking about it. But this community said, if you do, people won't go along, and we want to do this for the community downtown. And so at that point, I think the decision was made we'll wait until our state does whatever they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I can understand why that happened. And but I really would like to see us go ahead, because I don't think that facility is our answer, unless some way that distance between campus and that facility gets reduced in the minds of students.
Yeah. Can't even get them to go to church.
Is that right?
Yeah. Give them the chapel right on the campus, and they won't go to church.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you, size-wise, when you took over here or joined this faculty, before you took over the leadership, how many were there of you?
When I came here, there were 3 people who taught theater.
And no dance?
No dance. There was dance courses offered up in the phys ed department. And when we came, Dorothy and I came that year, she and I talked about the idea that it was very important for students in theater to know how to move. And so we talked about it, and we found out Judy Copal. Her husband was in the English department, and she had a background in dance. So we got Judy to offer a course in movement for theater students that year. And then after that, we continued to do that. And in those days, students, if it were a dance course, unless it was offered through the phys ed department, they would not get credit and let it count for the athletic requirement for graduation. So I can remember sitting up in the HPE building with Dick Wheeler and Dorothy and Judy and Betty Dillahunt and people in HPE. And I said, what's the matter? You offer it under an HPE number. And that's fine, just so our students can have the experience and learn from it and count it towards the phys ed requirement, but offer it under that department. So we did that for a number of years, and then we kept adding courses in dance, the technique courses, and then we eventually added a course in, I think it was probably 20th century dance was the first one, was a dance history course that Judy offered. And so we've built that. At this point, we have one full-time person in dance. And Judy was a selfless person. There was a possibility to create a full-time dance position. Did she want it? She said no. She would continue part-time because she felt that was the way to make sure if she took the full-time position, that's all it would be. So she said, the best thing for me to do is stay part-time. We'll get the full-time dance position, and they'll probably continue me. And so she did. So we were having 1 4/7, and then became 4/6 of a position, or 2/3 of a position. That was Judy. And when Judy retired last year, the provost agreed to replace her for 3 years with someone. So we have another dance historian scholar who teaches, and also teaches ballet for us. So we have the 2 people in dance. And then, I forget which year, we had become a separate department, moved out of the English department. That was when I was director of theater and chair. So it was dance and theater. And English kept the communications or speech person. And then when Ernie retired, I think that it stayed in that department for 1 year, and then the provost moved communications to our department, and we filled it for an interim year with an interim person, and then hired Kathy. And so Kathy's been there, I guess, about 3 years now. So speech is also, or communications is also this department. Also, at the same time, when Bill Webenga was here, he knew that one of the things that we really needed was somebody to help with the technical aspects. So he went and created a staff position that allowed us to hire someone for our costume shop. So we've had a costumer who works 20 hours a week, and also does other things like helps with props and so on. So we've had considerable growth. And when I say growth, that also means support from the provost. And
wasn't there somebody on staff here that had an Oriental background?
We have Sheningli Chang, who is from Taipei, from Taiwan, who is our dance person, full-time dance person. She has her master's from Smith College, MFA from Smith College. and she's been here and is now an American citizen. So,
Oh, good.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
wonderful. And then the woman who is teaching dance, other woman's from Brazil. So we're really a rather international department, as it turns out.
So how many students do you have in the department with an average?
I would say we probably have about 25 majors, maybe
Mm.
10 minors. We graduate. Our enrollment, it seems to me, is cyclical. We will get a big class every fourth year, and make it 7 or 8 people majoring,
Yeah.
and then we'll have the what would be left, another 6, 5 in those classes below. But it seems to be that every fourth year there's that large class. So we have about maybe 10 minors, and maybe I don't know, we might have as many as 9 dance minors right now too.
Looking at the employment opportunities of your graduates, how are they dispersing from the standpoint of attractive offers?
That's a good question, and I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think faces, and to think about our students.
Yeah.
We have. I think this year we did the Wittenberg series based around Wittenberg alumni, and I've chaired that series I guess maybe almost 15 years now, which has been fun. And so this year, when we decided we would focus on the graduates of Wittenberg, when we got to theater, we invited back Jim Rebhorn, who is a professional actor, does a lot of film work, and we invited Kathy Cox, who is a Broadway actress, and the two of them came in and did a performance of Love Letters for us, and it was just fantastic. So, I think about those people who are working, they've had a chance to establish careers. My wife, of course, was a theater major, as it turned out, an English and theater major, and she's done quite well with what she's doing. I look at Chris Conde, a young man who graduated a year ago, and he's in New York working for a lighting company. He's a real go-getter, Chris is, and he's doing well. We have students who've done their PhDs, their masters. Jerry Metzger, who's in California. Jerry is he's working in management and retail right now, but he's also a theater critic and writes for several papers out there. He did his master's at Columbia. Who else? I just saw Andy Wiedemeyer in California. His wife, Jenny Guthrie, was our designer here for a number of years in the 80s. And she went to California, and we have a whole group of students in California who are working. And Andy is working at Sony Studios right now on a film production. And he has a crew of 140 guys and women who work for him building scenery.
Wow.
Yeah. So
140?
yeah,
Good.
on this film.
Where?
It's at Sony Studios, and this film is called The Hollow Man, and they're just in the process of starting shooting on it. So when we were out at the studio, we went back on the sound stage and saw how it's constructed. It's really very impressive. But he's doing really quite well. Also out there, Peter Klug, who graduated from Wittenberg, theater major.
Remember him.
He is still pounding the pavement, acting, doing commercials, whatever, but he's bought a company that does CDs. People bring them soundtracks and they'll do the CDs for them. So he's doing that, and that business is going well. Another guy out there, Steve Naramore, is working for Princess Cruise Lines in promotions and has moved up the ladder. And his wife works for another group. And, we could go to the East Coast and think of people working in theater. Gary Strauss, who was a theater major, handles the subscription series for the New York Philharmonic. I always laugh at Gary because when he came as a freshman, he said, "I'm going to run your box office for you. Is that okay?" And, box office is not real glamorous. And so we're always thrilled when somebody wants to. And sure enough, Gary, that's what he wanted to do, and he did. And as it worked out, he's gone on, and now he handles that subscription series. So we have all kinds of people.
I think it's wonderful the way you've kept track of them.
Well, they're like bad pennies. No, they're good people. I'm always thrilled. We just came back from Singapore. Ann and I and Claire went to Singapore and Bali.
You did?
Yeah. Ann was installed today as the president of Rotary. Did you know that?
Yes.
First woman. So the international conference was in Singapore this year. So we went. That's where we were these last 2 weeks, in Singapore and Bali. So you know,
We have such competition between Kiwanis and Rotary.
you know,
We got a woman president 4 years ago and laughed about it. Rotary was way behind.
oh yeah, Rotary's been way behind. So, you know, anyway, so keep in touch with these people. In fact, when we were getting ready to go to Singapore, I called the alumni office and said, who do we have in Singapore? And so it turned out one of our theater majors is married and was living in Singapore. So I emailed her and she said, you're going to miss me because I'm moving to Tokyo. My husband's with General Electric and we're moving to Tokyo. But these are the things you ought to do while you're there. So, you know, it's fun keeping in touch with our students.
Yeah.
They're impressive.
You mentioned Kathy Cox.
Yes.
I traveled with her mother on a choir trip out of this place in 1948 to New York City and back on a 3-week tour, the 7 Last Words of Christ by our choir. It was quite an experience.
Oh, better.
She
Did her mother sing?
Her mother, a beautiful
voice.
Yeah.
Because both Kathy and Melinda have great voices. I haven't seen Melinda in years, and to be very honest, I had never really met Kathy face to face. We've talked on the phone over the years, so this was the first chance I had to meet her. Melinda was here when I first came. In fact, when I did the production of Godspell, her sister Melinda was my musical director for that. So, in a way, I've always sort of known the family and have great respect for those women. They're very talented.
The father was a Lutheran pastor in the suburb of Toledo, and he was a secretary of the Wittenberg Board for a number of years when I was very active.
Now, we've had some good PKs. Ann T-Meyer.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And Ann's a minister now. Did you know that?
No.
Yes. Yeah. She's
Well,
living in New York right now. She was part of the California group.
Oh, that T-Meyer family is something else.
And John White.
Yes?
Their son, John Andrew, second or third. He was one of our majors. He's in Texas. He's working for J.C. Penney right now. And his parents were here this spring, and they came over, made a point of coming over to find me. And I was out of the office, so when I came back, I found out they were doing a presentation in the library about Habitat for Humanity that they're both involved with now. So I went over and found them and got brought up to date on John and his ladies. But John is one of our most talented. He's quite an actor. He really is. And beautiful voice.
I don't have his parents in mind. Was there a John White out of Detroit? Would that be?
They were in Philadelphia.
Ford Motor?
No, his father was a Lutheran minister.
It's a different family.
They were in Philadelphia. His mother taught at Chestnut Hill Academy. And I always laugh because Bob Remsburg was John Sr.'s advisor. So when John Jr. or the second or third, whichever he is, graduated, I was his advisor. So we had all the students to our house on Fountain next to Bob and Millie, and their parents for reception. So Bob Remsburg came over so that he could see his advisee and that evening too. And that was...
Are you aware of what happened to the Remsburg house from the standpoint of ownership?
No.
It was bought by a Lutheran pastor here in town, and they didn't keep it very long. And a practicing attorney here in town by the name of Charles Sweeney, who's a divorced bachelor, bought it because Remsburg had married Sweeney's parents in that house. How about that?
That's a great story.
And he's maintaining his office there.
Well, now, I knew there was an attorney. I didn't know the part about the marriage in the house.
He's an outstanding tax attorney.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm glad that... Those are beautiful houses.
Oh, yeah.
I always hated leaving that. And what they always called Aunt Mary's house.
Yes.
So, because that was a great house, but it got to the point where we didn't want to see students 24 hours a day.
Uh-huh.
You know, you would see the students in the yard, you'd see them in the alley. One night I came home in the rain and found a student's car parked in the garage. I called the police. I first of all tried to find students, whoever it was. It was a FIGAM, I figured, and couldn't find. I eventually got fed up. I called the police and they wanted to know if I was crazy. I said, you sure it's not somebody in the family, their car in your garage? Are you sure? And I said, no, it's not. You know, I want it out of there. And then another spring, somebody picked all the flowers in the yard.
Yeah.
And we would have the Phi Dance when they were purpled up, running through PG Island weekend. And we would hear Chi Omega screaming. I would get up in the night, leave the bed, and go out to make sure no one was being attacked in the alley. And it would all be in great fun.
You were surrounded.
We were surrounded. So finally, Ann and I said, "Oh." And we were at the point where to invest in that house. You know, that we wanted to do something. We were going to stay. And realtor said, "You'll never get your money out of it." So we were sorry to leave, but and we always worried what would happen when Bob and Millie left or died. So that was because they were that was front row right out, and just all of these people who were here, and it is just a wonderful, wonderful time for history. So I'm really pleased with the museums coming, and that collection will have a home.